What's going on, everybody? Make sure you subscribe to my channel. I'm gonna throw that out there. We're gonna talk about something real interesting today, which most people don't know. And why they don't know, it's because it's been hidden from us, not told us, and so forth. Hold on one second. Okay. So I'm gonna kind of draw this in some way and also talk about it at the same time. Why humans are not in their natural habitat. And a great depiction of this basically is the same thing that happened to the Native Americans. So once you take the animal out of its natural habitat, then it's not going to behave how it should be naturally and ultimately, not ultimately, optimally, optimal. So let's just say, I was thinking like a circle, doesn't really matter at this point. When the people that came, and we're just going to use, we're going to be referencing the Native Americans a lot because it's the story that we do know. Though they're not telling you the full story about the Native Americans, and I don't necessarily know the full story. I do know the truth about some of it, but obviously we all heard the British or whoever, it might not even been the British, but the Pilgrims, they came and they invaded their natural habitat. Because Native Americans and other people were staying in their natural habitat with nature. That's why they lived long. They lie about how long, about the Native Americans, how long they lived. They lied about that. That's why you don't know this. They also lied about the food they eat. You don't know this. And basically just their whole way of living. Something that I find very niche or very interesting is something they never talk about is also their sex life. They never really talk about their sex life, and I've read a couple books that done studies on them, more primarily their teeth, and that book is The Health and Degeneration, a 500-page book. I didn't read the whole thing, but because it was repetitive, it was the same thing over and over. It was a dentist, and he went to investigated all these people on their teeth, but he should have asked them other questions, sex being one of the most important and interesting ones. Wouldn't you want to know that? But no, some people are dummies and don't think about that. Anyways, you don't know about this stuff. You only know a glimpse about the Native Americans. They live basically outside for the most part, and that they're Native Americans basically, and they got invaded. The Pilgrims, they want to talk about the Pilgrims. They are really bad people. Same with Christopher Columbus. These people were evil, quote unquote, what we would call evil. So they take over their natural habitat, will throw in some trees or whatever. This is also why there's slavery today. This is also why there's slavery. Slavery, there's a lot more behind it than why you think, but this is the reason. So the British, it's not necessarily even the British from my understanding anymore, but we can just say that. They come in, and this goes for anybody in their natural habitat. They come into their natural habitat, Native Americans, they take them over. Then they build all these buildings, cities, towns that are disconnected from nature. And then they make you work. So we can just take it out of context and put it on us. they make us work and become slaves. It's just as simple as that. So, I mean, I'm killing two birds with one stone. We're talking about slavery. Real life slavery is here today. Why? Because the Native Americans, maybe they had quarrels and fought against whatever nations, but we don't know that necessarily. We do know it a little bit, but we don't know the truth. That could have been something the opposition made up of. We had all these quarrels against each other, but I highly doubt people that living in harmony with nature were really fighting with each other that much, because what would there be to fight about? When you're already living in harmony, you have a natural food source, and they're Native Americans for the most part were nomadic. So we get into all these problems because they enslaved us. So they came in and enslaved the Native Americans. They built towns and cities and basically disconnected them from greed and evil, where the root comes from how we're supposed to live, or how they're supposed to live naturally. And this is how slavery is today, because we're not living in our natural habitat. We wouldn't be doing any of these jobs that people consider hard labor or even labor at that part, especially being in offices. So they trick you by lying to you, basically, and covering up the past history. And then they have all this slavery because all of the Native Americans and people that live in harmony off the land, they didn't have jobs. If anything, they bartered with each other, fish, maybe for, some jewelry or something they really wanted, maybe a horse. There's a lot of things to bargain and trade for. And they enslaved these people, basically, like they did to us. I mean, everybody is enslaved now. And so they make you do these jobs that have no recollection, that really have no meaning behind it. So, for example, the medical industry, they like making people sick. People really weren't sick back then. Retardation wasn't even real. Can you believe that? And there's many, many, many other things to talk about. But the medical industry, the evil people, they make you sick because it's how they make their money. They don't want you to be healthy. They don't want you dead either. They want you borderline really sick. That's the truth. There's a lot of lies, so many lies, but that's what we're not really talking about that. The natural habitat. So all of these things come in. The way music functions, the way music's made, it's not realistic anymore. It becomes AI. It becomes fake, basically. A lot of the technologies you don't need in your natural habitat because it's just not needed. It's just not. Technology, anyways, just really represents the spiritual side of things, foremost. So naturally, our natural habitat is outdoors, fresh air, natural things, wood and fire for warmth, natural clothing from, animals, that would be, and also the fibers of the plants. Also the food. This just keeps digging deeper. Also the foods, because the foods that you would go and see your food, you would go and get your food. There's a reason why you don't go and get your food and see your food anymore. They want you to be a slave. They don't want you to die. They want to have control of you. They don't want you to completely be dead. Some people, they want to die, but very little they want to die. They want to make you sick and have some retardation so they can control you. So our natural habitat is outside. Another funny thing about this is music. Music happens naturally outside when you're listening to all the sounds. Obviously, evil people aren't listening to these sounds. They're not in tune with nature. Evil people can't be in tune with nature to some degree or to the fullest degree because they're stuck in their heads basically, and again they're not with nature. So they took all the natural habitats out of nature. This is why there's slavery. This is why people get depressed. This is why people hate their jobs because they're, and then they feed you garbage, and then they make you ill, and then they want you to work just to give you pills and stuff that doesn't work, interventions and intervene of medications that might not work. See, this is all a labyrinth scheme. Our whole life and whole existence has been faked. It's been fake. We're not living our natural life. In cities and towns, they would, I can't tell you exactly what they would look like, but they would be completely different than how they are right now. There's a lot of symbolism and Masonic stuff that goes into there with the square. There's a reason why windows and buildings are all square, your phone's square, your app's square. These are all Masonic symbols. Again, there's evil, and the evil has, they have penetrated so deep, it's so unrealistic that people don't even think about it because they're programming, and the way that they think is not in tune with nature and completely out of it. So our natural habitat, where we do natural things, people really wouldn't be necessarily depressed, so to speak, and they'd live a more fruitful life. They would feel better, and community would be there. That's another thing, is the separation of the vision. People didn't really live on their own. There's no such thing. Maybe a few here and there, but we are tribalistic people. We live with tribes in big congruent families. There's a reason why I would say 50% of people like to travel, because we're nomadic people. We don't like to stay in one place. So the towns and the cities that they built enslaved us in jobs to get our food and whatever else that it is that we need, and give us all these fancy gadgets. It's all a distraction. It's all a distraction. Anything's pretty much a distraction at this point. Because they don't want you going back to nature. And this is what is happening in the cycle. Sorry, I didn't really draw this too much. I kind of don't know. I really didn't think about what to draw necessarily, because I, this is very broad. But when you take the person out of the habitat, it's just going to wreak havoc, and over centuries, more and more and more and more. A lot of people revert to drugs because they want us to do drugs. They want us to do drugs. Alcohol, sugar, and caffeine, especially coffee, are drugs. Just because they're not calling them drugs, they're drugs. They are drugs. They are drugs. I'll say it one more time. They are drugs. Doesn't mean you can't use them every once in a while, but they are drugs. That's why they're addictive. So most of everyone's problem in the world, what is it? It is that they're not living in their natural habitat. Because we have been taking out of that. Basically, where AI is trying to go, there's a couple things about it, but they're trying to, simulate us as if we're in our natural habitat. Nothing will take place of our natural habitat where we're supposed to be. That's why every time people go in nature, they always feel better. Always. And there's so many things. There's also EMFs, the radio signals. The signals go in and they're transmitting through the phones. Yada, yada, yada. It never ends, basically. People will basically go insane. That's what happens. And then they tell you you're sick and a psychopath. They basically tell you you're insane when you go, when you're outside from in nature. That's what happened. Eventually, you will go insane. That's why everyone even that's stuck in cities and urban life, eventually has to go to nature to some. Towns are not. They basically don't exist to some extent because they're not our natural habitat. This is why homesteading is coming back, off grid, van life. What do all of these things, backpacking, hiking, what do all of these things have in common? They're outside, fresh air most of the time. Fresh air is one of the most important things ever because you're consuming it all the time. So you should always have a cracked window or an open window no matter where you live at the time of the year to get that fresh breath. It's very vital. I notice immediately anytime I'm in a place that has all closed walls and windows. Not good. I notice immediately. I don't understand how other people don't notice it and become aware. And then they spray. We're not even gonna get it. So our natural habitat is in the wild, basically. And the reason why people go insane and develop illnesses is basically they go away from nature. We'll add that up there. And like I said, yeah, sorry, I didn't really think of what to draw, and I don't really know what to draw necessarily for this one. Nature, or natural habitat. Also many other things, like I said, fresh air, but there's also going to be the moonlight that affects us, and there's also going to be the sun, and also just the weathering conditions in themselves acclimate us and set us up with the ionosphere or just the environment in itself. So somebody that stays in all winter like a bear, which maybe you can do 1 year, but it's not good to do that. We are meant to be in the cold. We're meant to be in our environment. God damn it. And you'll realize it's not that harsh once you're actually in it. Because again, being inside and on the walls making you go psychotic is being devoidant of our natural thing. Also dumbing down our senses. Also missing out on the sun, fresh air, and just being in the environment. I could talk about it, but you would have to be there to experience it. So that's it for this video. There's many topics to talk about within this, but let me know what you think down below. Have a nice one.